What's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of the RTG career mode. This is episode number 20. We're starting today's stuff with Villarreal in the last 32 of the Copa del Rey, and I really want to talk about this to you guys there as well. Like, I have always said that English football I think is fantastic, and the thing that I'm most proud about of English football is how strong our football pyramid is. The thing that I'm most proud of, just how strong our pyramid and how deep it goes in terms of quality as well. You know, we've got 4 divisions: League 2, League 1, Championship, and also Premier League that is fully professional. But also our National League is now mostly professional, and even National North and National South, quite a lot of teams are semi-pro as well, with some also making the ranks of professional as well. But there are certain things that I do feel as though English football could be improved upon, and we don't need to look too far for inspiration of countries that get it right, if you will. And for me, I've said many times before, I think German teams get this spot on in terms of ownership. I'm also a firm believer that the Premier League should go down to having 18 teams, like in the Bundesliga as well, so a 34-game league season. I also do believe there should only be one major cup competition in the English Football League as well, which of course would be the FA Cup, and that the Carabao Cup should be scrapped, as I've said many times before. In Spanish football, for example, you just have the Copa del Rey. In German football, you just have the DFB Pokal. I know that in French football, they recently scrapped a couple of years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, the Coupe de la Ligue, which was the equivalent of the League Cup in England, and now they only have the Coupe Nationale, which of course is the FA Cup equivalent. And I do believe that in Spanish football, one thing they get right as well with their cup competition, and the reason why it's still regarded as so highly coveted, is because of the way they schedule it. So we're taking on Villarreal here. We're 3 weeks into the January transfer window. So the league comes to a break this weekend for the Copa del Rey last 32 clash year. We take on Villarreal. We took the lead for Adama Traore. Villarreal then flipped the script to lead 2-1, but then later on in the game, Lorenzo Niga levels it for us, sends it into extra time, but in the end, no goals in 30 minutes will mean we'll go to a penalty shootout. Now, this is another thing which I think Spanish football gets spot on. In the Copa del Rey, there are no cup replays. And, of course, in the English FA Cup, we know now that in the last 16 onwards, there are no cup replays. But there are in the rounds prior to the last 16. So it's only from the last 16 onwards where there are no cup replays. But in the Copa del Rey, there's no cup replays regardless of what round you're playing in. Regardless of where your team enter, there are no cup replays whatsoever. Now, we talk a lot about how there are too many games, players are too tired, fitness, fatigue, niggling injuries, knocks every now and then. They can be exacerbated through too much game time. Well, there are so many ways you can easily start to reduce fixture fatigue and fixture congestion, and one of those is by scrapping cup replays. Now, I totally understand why cup replays can be really beneficial for those that are lower down the pyramid. I completely understand that as I go for a Hakimi-esque Panenka with the Moroccan El Akab, but totally got the timing wrong and chipped it way over the bar. I'd saved 3 penalties in a row. That was the chance to win it, and I sent the ball into orbit. Gabriel Martinelli was standing to take the next one, but his opposing number 13 makes the save, and I saved 4 penalties in a row. That's incredible, man. Absolutely incredible. First time I've done that in a long time. 4 penalty saves in a row as we make it through to the last 16. But sorry, yeah, so now I totally understand the benefit of cup replays if you're low down the pyramid. If you're a non-league side, listen, unbelievable. Every non-league side is going to love a replay. A football league side, the higher up the pyramid, the better. I totally understand that, don't get me wrong. For TV money, the experience playing in front of a big crowd, you know, for example, if you're like a League 2 or a National League side, you know, earning a replay, you know, away against a side with like a 30 or 40,000 capacity stadium, incredible experience. And again, you get the gate receipts and the TV money as well. I totally understand that. It can make a big difference to those lower down the pyramid. But oftentimes a cup replay might be played between 2 teams in the same division a few days later, and it just adds to more fatigue. It adds to another fixture in the calendar which is already congested, especially if you're a Football League side, when you've got 46 games, plus the Carabao Cup, if you're League 1 and League 2, plus the Papa John's Trophy, if you go far enough, plus the playoffs as well. It's just too many games. And it's one thing which I really think the Spanish will get spot on. There are no replays whatsoever. But it's also this in the Copa del Rey. The following game, after making it through Villarreal in the last 32, is the next round of Copa del Rey. We now take on Real Valladolid here at the Estadio La Rosaleda 3 days later. And as Adams Orgain bends in this beautiful effort with 21 minutes to go here from just outside the area, I'm going to start pulling the trigger with this guy more, man. Seriously, that's his second goal this season. I was smacked in from range. I've got to start shooting more from 18 to 25 yards from this guy because he's got some really good accuracy. He makes it 2-0. We know we're surely progressing through to the quarterfinals of the Copa del Rey. And that game, again, is going to come in another 3 or 4 days. And I think this is absolutely fantastic. And this is something that the English FA should look into as well as a damn Traore. Coolly chips it home to make it free and send us through to the last day. You know, to me, I think sometimes, let's be honest here, the FA Cup can be accused of losing its magic a little bit and not being quite as coveted as it was back in the olden days, if you will. I mean, for me, for sure, like, FA Cup final was like the game, you know, you could not miss it. And nowadays, I'll be honest, you know, last year, I'll be honest, I didn't watch the FA Cup final last year. It was Chelsea versus Liverpool. To be fair, it was a friend's 30th birthday. But even so, I wasn't really that fussed. I was getting score updates underneath the table with, you know, without wishing to distract from the celebrations. I was checking BBC Sport a little bit every now and then. In the end, it went down to penalties, so I had to do it quite a few times. But, you know, I think sometimes the FA Cup can be accused of losing its magic a little bit, especially in the more recent years. And sometimes the Cup can be now regarded as secondary. Like, if you were to say to, you know, to most football fans with their teams in the Premier League here, you know, what would you prefer to win, the Premier League or the FA Cup? Well, when I was a kid, you could possibly debate it. Now, most people would still admittedly say the Premier League, but you could possibly debate it. But now the FA Cup, let's be honest here, the vast majority of people are going to say Premier League. The FA Cup is considered secondary to the league being the primary. But I feel as though, you know, one way to keep the magic and the excitement of the Cup alive and to keep people's interest in the competition as well is to reduce the gap between the rounds. And this is something I think Spanish football gets spot on. If you look at the Copa del Rey rounds, there is a much shorter gap and shorter waiting period, if you will. Compared to the FA Cup, for example, if we go off this season, I know it's a little bit different because, of course, we had the Winter World Cup in Qatar, but the third round to the fourth round is always played in January, which is fair enough. But then the gap between the fourth round to the fifth round was a whole month. There was a whole month of waiting between the fourth and the fifth round. One of the reasons why, replays, of course, and the other reason why is because the scheduling, the way that the FA scheduled the rounds. A whole month to wait for the next round, and then from the fifth round to the quarters, that's like another 3 weeks, and then the quarters to the semis, it's like a month. You know, it's a massive gap between the rounds, and to me, I think the excitement gets lost a little bit when you're waiting for so long. And that's something which I think the FA should really look into. You know, in my opinion, if I was president of the FA and I got to have a total rebrand of the FA Cup, that's exactly what I would do. I would scrap replays. I would forget all about replays. There are too many games as they are. I'd for sure scrap the Carabao Cup. But also as well, I'd reduce the waiting period between rounds. In the Copa del Rey, we've gone from playing our last 32 game all the way through to playing our quarter-final. 3 rounds in the space of 7 days. To me, I think that's fantastic. I think that's absolutely fantastic. It kept our interest high. It made sure that we were, you know, fully focused on this competition. It keeps the reputation of the competition important. And we also make it all the way through to the semi-finals, which come the next month. To me, I think that's what the FA should do as well. Like, I really do believe that. Reduce the gap of waiting, scrap replays, and make sure that, again, if the Carabao Cup was to be scrapped as well, that would also improve the importance and reputation, if you will, of the cup competition, because there's no secondary. There's just one. There is just one main cup competition. Anyway, we are through to semi-finals, and as you'll see, we'll be taking on Girona, right now struggling down the bottom of the table. Athletic Madrid taking on Athletic Bilbao. They're also struggling down the table as well. And when are the semi-finals coming? Both legs in February. like I said, in my opinion, the Copa del Rey get this spot on. But that will end today's episode of the RTG Career, guys. Big fan of watching. Really hope you have enjoyed it. If you had, then please do drop a like. Myself to you all. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you for both of those Copa del Rey semi-finals, first and second legs in the next episode very soon.